wabarakatuh. Um, I hope my voice is clear. Okay, I think it's clear. Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My topic is civilizational populism. To be honest, I'm going to talk mainly about populism, given that this is good to introduce what it is first. But in order for me to relate it to the Muslim world, that is why I'm going to talk about this form of populism called civilizational populism that scholars, political scientists, sociologists are looking into to understand this current phenomenon, I would say, that we're seeing not just in the Muslim world, but all over the world actually. So that is just my information. I'm, as introduced, I'm Dr. Syaza Farhana at the Department of Political Science. I'm currently the head of the department at the International Islamic University Malaysia. And I do teach a course on populism at the department. And when I teach that course, the main focus or the main discussion that I have with my students is how do we view populism in terms of positively or negatively? Some people don't like it when I say that it's in a way both. It's a mix of both. It's your perspective, your priorities. But to be honest, this is the world of social science. But then we are Muslims, so we bring our values into it, and that values guide how we view this populist phenomenon. So this is my agenda, my plan for today. Like I said, I'll focus a lot on the definition because we can't discuss it further unless we really understand what it means. And to be honest with all of you, people still don't have a clear grasp on what populism actually means. There's a lot of discussion surrounding it on how to define it, how to view it. Because the thing is, if you follow the news, if you read the news, this word of populism or a populist leader has been thrown about quite a lot in the past 10 years. So people are slowly trying to understand, slowly trying to make sense, but there's a lot of discourse over what does it actually mean, and I'll explain how I choose to view it from a certain way. Of course, I need to talk a little bit about the historical context to make sense of why we have this rise of populism that I just mentioned. And then we are looking just a little bit at populism in Islamic societies, just to show and to share with everyone that this rise of what we call the right-wing populism has affected Muslim societies as well. Is populism values-free? Like I said just now, how do we view it? Positively, negatively? What is the future for us if populism goes unchecked? And why? Why should we learn about populism as Muslims? Why am I speaking about it in this course today, in this certificate class, right? Or should we just abandon it? We don't need to talk about it. It's something that evades us. I would argue that as Muslims, it's actually important for us to understand what it is so that we can have a more civilized political discourse. Okay, as I promised on the definition, it is a political approach aiming to represent the interests and voices of ordinary people. Let me put it this way. Populism, obviously the root comes from the word people, is a political approach or political strategy whereby politicians or leaders stress the dichotomy between the elite group versus the people. Okay, so most of history, of course, we've always had leadership, national leaders, even in empires, we've always had leadership. But the thing is, especially in a democratic system, even outside of a democracy, the role of the leader is to provide a good life for the people, not necessarily to represent the people. In a democracy, yes, in a democracy, leaders or the elites should represent the people, meaning should represent the people's interests, doing what is best for the people. But like I said, even in non-democratic societies, meaning in semi-authoritarian societies, one-party societies, leaders are still expected to, like I said, do things that are in the people's interests, create policies that are good for the people. So when the leaders fail to do that, what happens is there might be a movement, a group of people, or a leader or leaders that would come together and claim that we, the people, need to unite against the leaders. Okay, this is fine. This should not be a problem. And this was the case in the early 20th century, I guess late 19th century, when it's about people coming together. Because this was, what shall we say, the advent of democracy, right? The idea of democracy was spreading that the people should come together. The land belongs to us. We should decide what's best for us. So this is what we call inclusionary populism, or sometimes people call it left-wing populism, which is positions the people against the elite, often highlighting perceived inequalities between the people and the elites. And I guess dissatisfaction, frustration with the elites. But because the elites are powerful, politically and economically powerful, we need the masses. We need a large group of people to be able to come together against the elite. It can be in the form of a revolution, a coup, whatever it is. But the aim is to bring a large swath of people together against the elite. This is also the discursive view of populism. Let's just put it that way. The Laclauian view of populism, which is that we create this idea of the people. But the thing is, when we say the people, the question is who are the people, right? When we say the people against the elite, is there such a thing as a single people? So the idea is that these populist leaders, in a way, create this idea of the people. Okay, that is inclusionary populism. If we take modern times, that's also what we saw around 2008, 2009. If anyone remembers that time period, that was around the 2008-2009 financial crisis. The neoliberal economic order was in a crisis, basically, and we saw the rise of left-wing populists trying to portray the elites of, not taking care of the masses. If anyone remember the Occupy movements around that time. So that is inclusionary populism. But then it has evolved today. Not that it has evolved, but today we see a lot more of right-wing populism or exclusionary populism. So what is this? Which is populists that highlight social differences. So it goes back to what I said just now. Populism rests on the idea of the people. But who are the people? That's the thing. Is there such a thing as one people? So in different countries, what happened is that populists would create. I use the word create because this is a social construct. The idea of the people. And then it becomes us, the people, against them, the others. If before this it was us, the people, against them, the elites, now it is us, the people, against them, the others. So the question is, who are the others. So the others here can take many forms. So that is why we're seeing the rise of populism today. They have otherized many groups of people. If we talk about the West, because of their concern over economic development, they put the blame of everything that's wrong with the country on migrants. And the intersection between, and we talk about Europe, even in America, the intersection between migrants and Islam. So we saw Islamophobic reaction by government against Muslim migrants, and they paint Muslim migrants as the others who are coming to steal our job, is going to ruin our life, ruin our country. So this is the typical discourse that we see today. So what are the characteristics of populism? This is to help make people understand how you can pinpoint or discover when we say someone is a populist leader. These are some things that they usually have. Number one, they appeal to emotion on anger. And anger, meaning that, for example, the one that I gave just now about in the West, how they are portraying migrants as the others, the one who are coming to steal our jobs, etc., etc. The facts do not support that. The numbers do not support that, meaning that, of course, there are migrants coming into the country, but how big are they? How powerful are they to quote unquote steal the jobs and replace the people? It's not enough. So that is based on facts. But populists, they don't go based on facts. They go based on emotions, based on anger, based on fear. So why do they do this? This is political science 101, because that is the best way to get support. That is the best way to get votes, right? When you are trying to get votes, people don't, a lot of people are politically unaware. So if you talk about facts, it's a bit difficult. But if you go with emotions, if you scare people, that's easier. It's easier to bring people together. And that's number one. Number two, populists usually use simple, direct language. They're very simple. So again, let's just use the example that I gave because it's easier. We're talking about economic problems, which is a very complex issue. It's not a one solution fit all kind of situation. When we talk about the economy, it's all of society, every angle. But for a populist, they want to avoid this complex issue because they know the average people, average voters, don't understand complexities. If you talk about numbers and inflation and GDP and FDI, it's a bit too complex. So what populists do is they simplify it. They put the blame on, like I said, a group of people. That's easy. That's simple. Anyone can understand. The world we are living in is horrible because that one group of people. It's easy. And then you have a scapegoat. Then people can just attack and people can come together against that other group of people. Third, in the past 10 years, it has become more nationalistic and anti-establishment. Nationalistic means because of this whole idea of protecting us, the people, it has become, let's just protect our people, just us. So it's become nationalistic. Anti-establishment is basically anti-elite, but when we say anti-elite, anti-corporation, anti-media, the whole idea of fake news, because they don't believe mainstream media anymore. So this is part of it. Calls for systemic change. Of course, they're advocating, they're calling for a change in the system. So the rise of right-wing populism today is they want to go back to a past. That's the claim. They want this systemic change, this kind of revolution to go back to the past because they claim that the current order is not working. Of course, again, we can debate about that, of course. Advocacy for direct democracy. Populists, because they know that their power rests on their popularity with the people. So populists are always calling for direct democracy. Let people choose and decide. Fine, we believe in democracy. That is fine. let people choose. But the thing is, where you just let people choose with no, what shall we say, parameters on how to make those choices, this is when people go with emotion, with anger. I should add one more actually. Another characteristic of populism that I think is very important if you want to differentiate between a populist and a democrat is the idea of delegitimization, meaning that a populist, they would delegitimize the others. They would say that the other group are wrong, not just wrong, but the other group of people don't have a say in society. They don't have the right to speak up, or even if they do, it should be limited because they're not the people. So their rights are limited. So that's another characteristic of populism, actually. So here are just examples of contemporary populists. You may recognize some of them. From the top left is Jair Bolsonaro of Brazil, Narendra Modi from India. People have claimed Recep Tayyip Erdogan as well from Turkey, Giorgio Meloni from Italy, Viktor Orban from Hungary, and Donald Trump is the biggest example, who is going to be the president in a few days' time, again in the US. I want to talk a little bit about Trump. So as I was saying, initially in our current context, we saw the rise of left-wing populists during the financial crisis. But then around 2016, two important things happened. Brexit, when the United Kingdom decided to leave the EU, and the election of Donald Trump in America. Both happened in 2016. So a lot of people pointed to this time, 2016, as when we saw the increasing rise of right-wing populism, because we saw their success. If you remember Brexit, it was based on the idea of British nationalism, right? Britain is different from the rest of Europe. This nationalist sentiment. Same with Donald Trump, right? He won in 2016 after Barack Obama left, on this idea that we all know it, make America great again. This idea that America should be a certain way, right? Mostly conservative, Christian, this whole idea of MAGA, make America great again. So 2016, we saw this in these two major Western countries, and then it spread to the rest of the world and to where we are today, 2025. This is going a bit more. I should have rearranged my slide. Just a bit of historical context. As I was saying, populism in the early 20th century was inclusionary, meaning it's about bringing the people together against the elite. However, even in this kind of, what shall I say, with this background, the problem with populism is that they have the tendency to become authoritarian, okay? So who are these three men I have here? On the left is Juan Perón from Argentina, the president of Argentina in the 1940s and 50s. Great guy in terms of bringing workers together, but there were human rights abuses. I'll talk about that later. The one in the middle, Alberto Fujimori, also from South America, from Peru, also started off great. When I say great, meaning trying to solve the economic problem, the hyperinflation that they had back then, but also turned dictator. Is that the word? Authoritarian, dictatorial. And the third guy, all the way on the right, is Hugo Chavez of Venezuela. Same thing, he got into power during the oil boom, so there were a lot of money. With that money, he was able to had social reforms, increased welfare, economic reforms. Great. But when the money runs out, then the economy crashed. And also, he also became dictatorial. So what's the point I'm trying to make here? While populists started off as claiming to represent the people, in other words, it sounds democratic. You want to represent the people. The problem with populism is they believe in majoritarian democracy as opposed to pluralism. So what is majoritarian democracy? Majoritarianism is when they believe that since I get the support of a majority of the people, I can do whatever I want. So this whatever I want sometimes include human rights abuses, like I said, especially on the others, those that they delegitimize, those that they disagree with. It becomes authoritarian. If you are a Democrat or someone who believes in democracy, even if you win an election, you would still protect the rights of people in your country because you are now the president of the entire country. You are the prime minister of the entire country. So you have to protect everyone. What these populists do is the opposite. They say because I'm popular, people voted for me again and again, then I can do whatever I want. So that is why populists tend to become authoritarian once they've been in power for a while. So as I was saying before, populism also we saw in Islamic societies. Why I say saw, why I'm using past tense? Because we can look at history. Again, when we say the people against an elite, in the early 20th century, the elite was easily colonial power. So fine, as Muslims, we came together as the people to contrast ourselves with the colonial elite, right? So these are the people that we want to defeat because we have the right to our land. That is fine. For example, the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt fighting against British colonialism, same as Syarikat Islam in Indonesia against Dutch colonialism. So it's a form of populism because it's bringing people together. So remember, this is the inclusionary populism that I mentioned earlier, where you want to bring people together. Now, as the second point there, a distinctive feature of Islamist populism is the key concept of the Ummah, especially post-caliphate in nation-state system. So nowadays, what we're seeing is, when we talk about populist leader, remember, it's the idea of us versus them, the people versus the others. And remember, I said earlier, how do we define the people? Who are the people? So the people here are the Ummah. So this is civilizational populism. Populism based on a civilization. And what is this civilization? The Muslim civilization, the Ummah. So this is the kind of civilizational populism that we are seeing today. The rise of the idea of we are the Ummah against those who are not part of the Ummah. Just differentiating between the two groups is fine. The problem is when you start to, like I said earlier, delegitimize the others. You start to become abusive to the others. You start to take away their rights. You start to make fitnah and false claims on the others. That is the danger, right? But just talking about the Ummah, there's nothing wrong, of course. We are the Ummah. No one, that is not the problem. But it becomes a problem on, so what do you make of people who are not part of the Ummah? Do you still respect them? That's the question. So try to relate that to us as Muslim. So this is a verse that I think most, if not all of us are familiar with, right? From Hujarat, which says, "O humanity, indeed we created you from a male and female and made you into peoples and tribes so that you may get to know one another. Surely the most noble of you in the sight of Allah is the most righteous among you. Allah is truly all-knowing, all-aware." What it's trying to say, like I said, most of us are familiar with this verse, is we are different and that's okay. There are different tribes, different nations, different ethnicities, because we're supposed to get to know one another. We're not supposed to claim that we, the people, are right, those the others are wrong. When your claim of them being wrong is based on their identity and nothing else. So this is far-right populism. You're othering people based on their identity and nothing else. Because why? Like I said, that is an easy, simple explanation for a populist to make when they're trying to explain to the people. Remember, simplicity is the key. So it's simple just to put the blame on some group of people. But that's not what Islam teaches us, right? That's not what is in the Quran. We're supposed to get to know and learn and celebrate the differences, because there is strength in it, in diversity. So this is what we should do, learn from one another, not delegitimize one another. So it goes back to, again, the whole theme of whenever I teach populism is to think of, is it values free? Meaning that, how do we view it, right? So populism, of course, has its positive and negative side. Positive side, like I said, rejection of elitism, meaning that even in Islam, we're supposed to see one another as equal. There should not be a hierarchy, right? Those who are good in the eyes of Allah are based on their iman, their faith, and nothing else. There should not be hierarchies. So that is in line with Islam. We reject this idea of hierarchy, of nationalism, of tribalism, of elitism, of oppression by the elites, oppression by colonial power. All of this we reject, no problem. Emphasis on cultural identity, also again, no problem. We want to celebrate our culture, our identity of Muslims. Like I said earlier, there's nothing wrong with saying we are an ummah. This is who we are. This is our identity. This is the Muslim worldview, right? Which is based on belief in God, belief in the Prophet. There's nothing wrong. Appeal to traditional values, also there's nothing wrong. This is what the West is going through. They reject liberalism right now. They're rejecting liberalism. They want to go to conservative traditional values. No problem. As Muslims, we also agree with that. We agree with family values as Muslims. We agree with a certain view on gender identity. So all of this aligns with us as Muslims. But the negative part is here, as I've already mentioned here and there. Oversimplification of complex issues. We can't, what's the right word, yeah? We can't lie to the people. I'm trying to relate to what Dr. Aida was teaching us just now, mashallah, very great sharing. When you are marketing based on Islamic principles, it should be based on facts, right? So you can't simply say, oh, this problem is because of some group of people who's causing it. You need to show the proof, the evidence, what's the data, how are they affecting us? Number two, polarization and divisiveness. Like I said, for a populist to win, they need to create this division. They need to polarize because they need to show that there is a difference between us and them. So polarization is never good, right? When we are divided, when we are polarized, this is the world that we're living in. We're always fighting one another now because we're not celebrating unity. We're going for division. Why? Because this division actually benefit certain group of people, which are the populist leaders. Weakening of democratic institutions, the savior complex. So this is what I meant just now. Populists tend to become authoritarian because once they are in power and they say they're in power because the people support them, there's this savior complex. I mean, they feel that I and I alone can solve all the problems in the world. How can one person, and we know we are humans, we sin, we make mistakes, and claim that you are the one and only that can solve all the problems in the nation. It weakens democracy and it leads to authoritarianism. So these are the things that I want us to think. Does this align with Islamic values? So again, that's positive and that's negative. So again, this is what I referred to earlier when I mentioned, I think this is also a verse that a lot of us are familiar with from Baqarah. Righteousness is not turning your faces towards the east or west. Rather, the righteous are those who believe in Allah, the last day, the angels, the books, and the prophets, who give charity out of their cherished wealth to relatives, orphans, the poor, needy, travelers, beggars, and for freeing captives, who establish prayer, pay alms, tax, and keep the pledges they make, and who are patient in times of suffering, adversity, and in the heat of battle. It is they who are true in faith, and it is they who are mindful of Allah. My question to you is, does anywhere here says anything about identity, about your ethnicity, about your tribe? None. So as Muslims, this is what we should hold on to, that what makes us good Muslims in the eyes of Allah are our iman and our actions. And even actions, as he says, it's not just turning your face towards the east or west, it's all the other things. But the point here is, we can't delegitimize people based on simply who they are in terms of their identity. And this is what populists try to do, right? They're trying to create this division between us and them. So now we are already in the 21st century. We're going to the third decade of the 21st century.
The 21st century is the current century.
Sorry, my Siri. Okay. So what's the future for us that we need to think of? Number one is the role of technology. With the rise of the internet and today of social media, there is a bigger chance, bigger opportunity for populists to prosper. If you realize it on social media allows for all of the things that make populists popular. The simplification that I kept on talking about. When you're watching a 1 minute, 2 minute video, you don't get the whole picture, right? And when in a 1 minute or 2 minute video, you get a very simplified version of event. And guess what? That is the video that will be circulated. That very simple video that doesn't give you all the information will be spread on WhatsApp and all the other social media. So this is the danger that we're living in. People don't read books anymore. People don't go through 200, 300 pages anymore. They just want something easy to understand. And a populist can easily manipulate that, the people's desire for simplicity, access to the masses. So like I said, populists, they want to go direct to the people. So with social media, like what Trump is doing, Trump speaks directly to the people via his social media. Back in 2016, it was Twitter. Now he has his own social media platform, the Truth Social. So it allows them to speak directly to the people. Again, it has its pros and cons. Fine, direct democracy is good. But then you start to believe that everything you say is true because you don't see from the other side anymore. And the rise of fake news, I've talked about that. Globalization, altering traditional framework. We live in a globalized world. We are connected. We start to ape what is going on in the world. We follow what is happening in the world. We forget to see things from our perspective. So that's a concern. So like I said, populism has its good and bad side. The potential for unity, increased cultural cohesion. So like I said, since we are in a globalized world now, it's easier for us to connect to one another, right? So when we talk about the idea of the ummah, it makes a lot of sense today because we are so connected to everyone, to the Uyghurs, to the Palestinians, to the Rohingyas, to Muslims in the West who are being scapegoated right now. We are connected. therefore, there's a sense of unity that we are an ummah, a Muslim ummah. But unity leads to this idea of homogenization, that we all should be one and only one, meaning that there should not be diversity. But is this true? Potential conflict, of course, ideological clashes today, the rise of the West, the rise of conservatism, the rise of how they are going against Muslims, the rise of Islamophobia. All of these things are what we are seeing today, and populists are making use of all of this. Regional disparities. So populists started off as trying to reduce inequality, but what we're seeing now is increasing inequality. Because we are fighting just for one side. We're not truly united. So those are all the issues. So finally, as Muslims, as I started earlier, why should we learn about populism? What does this have to do with us? So in Surah Hud, it says, had your Lord so will, he would have certainly made humanity one single community of believers, but they will always choose to differ. Again, the idea that if Allah wants, we can all just be one, but he didn't make it that way. So we should celebrate all of these differences, respect one another, instead of vilifying and delegitimizing one another. Number two, if the enemy is inclined towards peace, make peace with them and put your trust in Allah. Indeed, He alone is all hearing, all knowing, from Surah Al-Anfal. Again, if people want to make peace, we make peace. Not continuously fight because we don't understand the world around us. When we don't understand the world around us, we are scared. And we are scared. This is how we react. So the answer to that is knowledge, right? The more knowledge we have, the clearer our vision is, that we won't easily fall into the trap of a populist leader. So the conclusion is, why should we learn? For our well-being, for harmony, for peaceful coexistence. All of this has to do with the 5 pillars of Maqasid al-Sharia, protecting our religion, protecting our life, protecting our wealth, our future generation, our lineage, our knowledge, right? So that's the importance of learning about populism, because as Muslims, we strive for peace. And with that, I look for your question.
Thank you very much, Doctor. Okay, we open for Q&A. Let's see in the chat box.
I don't think I see a question.
Okay, they have direct question from Brother Abdullah Kim. Brother, you can unmute yourself.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Yeah, thank you, Doctor, for this very insightful, very thought-provoking lecture. Thank you so much. This issue of populism, I want to ask, can we categorize the recent issues of Salafia, Boko Haram in Nigeria as being the populism or populists? And how can we solve this problem of disunity among Muslims? Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, brother. I really like that question. And I'm really thinking about it now, because a little bit of background, I started to look into populism as my research for the past, mashallah, 7 years now. My first publication on populism was 2018, 2019. So I've looked into it for 7 years now. But before I really go deep into populism, I was looking at more like entities like Boko Haram, very traditional radical Islamist group, and how that plays into Muslim society. Just based on my many years of working on this, at the top of my head, I wouldn't categorize Boko Haram as a populist. Like I said, it's a typical radical group, instead of populism, because, so this is my because, populism or populist leaders or movements, they rely on support from the masses. But of course, a lot of people have pointed out to me, it doesn't mean that they need to have the support of majority of the people. It's true. But their, how should I say, their popularity depends on their ability to influence people, to make people believe in what they're doing. So if I may contrast Boko Haram with, and I know this is a huge stretch just because I saw something about Israel. So in Israel, we are seeing the rise of populism as well. Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister, is an all-out populist. A lot of literature have talked about it. No question, he's a populist. He's trying to win over the right wing in Israel by playing up this idea of not just Judaism, but a specific version of Judaism, specific version of Israel against the others. And we know there are Arabs and Muslims in Israel, but this is Bibi Netanyahu. And he does get support from the conservative faction, but now his support is fluctuating. Boko Haram doesn't operate in that kind of structure or framework. They really just do what they want, with or without support of the people, because they believe that what they're doing is right, meaning that they don't need to win over the people. But populists, they know that they need to win over the people, and that is the source of their power. That's what I was trying to say just now. So no, I wouldn't categorize Boko Haram as a populist. However, this is what we have seen. There might be one or two leaders who are affiliated or related or have the same ideology that will suddenly come out and say, well, I'm going to participate in the democratic process, but sharing that ideology of us versus them. So this is the fear. So your question of how we can solve this, I really don't know, right? The not diversity, but the polarization in the Muslim world. If you ask me, my answer when I give to my students has always been, it starts at the top. If the leaders can figure things out, it can cascade. But when we talk about geopolitics, there's very little incentive for our leaders to come together. And that has caused this unity. And like I said, it's all a political calculation, unfortunately. Maybe the solution would be then also educate the masses, right? So that we know the kind of leaders that we want. Thank you so much for that question. Let me see. Sister Jari, I can look at the chat box, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. Sure.
I think I have 1 more minute. What are the strategies to bring people to understand the method of the But again, strategies to let people understand, to be honest, is more of things like this. Getting people to see the dangers of populism. The thing is, populist leaders, they don't call themselves populists. And this is another discussion altogether, because it has become a pejorative term. When people hear populist, it means something negative. So people don't want to call themselves populists. But we can see in terms of their strategy, their approach, their rhetoric, things that they say, if they are populists. And we want people to, when I say people, we want the masses to be aware of, don't fall into the trap, because these leaders, I say leaders because, leaders should lead, not use people, but they manipulate people for their own power. This is not what we want, especially in a democracy. This is not what we want. So it's more about, awareness, getting people to recognize. Or another thing is, we need to enhance and embed this norm of respecting one another. We really need to talk about that, and really need to celebrate that, respecting one another. Then we can defeat these populists. Do populist leaders employ misinformation, lies, hatred? Yep. definitely. Definitely, like I said, it's purposeful misinformation or purposeful simplification, because this is how you win votes. This is how you get votes. Because if you tell people that, yeah, economy is not that good, but the economy is improving, people don't want to hear that. That's not scandalous, you know. People want to hear economy is really horrible. We're all going to the trashes, and this is what people want. This is what would gain traction on social media, and this is what would give votes to some of these people, unfortunately. So I think that's all the time I have. Thank you so much for all the questions.